Alright everyone, it's time to talk about a rising problem within the alt-right. Now first and foremost, because otherwise clips of this will be taken out of context by Holt and BuzzFeed, I am not on the alt-right. In fact, I'm not even a conservative. I'm a libertarian. I see conservatives and liberals as basically the same thing in many regards. One thing, though, on which, and I've been defamed repeatedly by the left-wing media for this, one thing on which I've defended the far right repeatedly on for the last 2 years is their right to speak freely. I do not believe in punching Nazis. I do not believe in suppressing people for having opinions that you happen to find offensive or objectionable unless they are otherwise causing actual harm, defamation, incitement, and credible threat. Those are the only classifications that should result in any sort of punitive action against a person. Therefore, I've defended repeatedly the alt-right's right to speak, and as such, some people confuse that for being an alt-righter. Much like if some hippie group is being suppressed, like when I talk about the drug war, and I say people shouldn't be in jail for being addicted to drugs, some people comment on my videos not knowing anything else about me and say, well, you fucking hippie, you just want to smoke dope. That's why you're saying these things. And then I get a good laugh, because it's gotten to the point where sometimes I wake up, I check like comments and stuff that I've gotten. One person saying I'm a goddamn hippie and I need to find Jesus, and another person saying I'm Hitler. So, yeah, these are irreconcilable. It's part of the current political paradigm that we're in. I understand that. And, like, you basically just don't apologize for anything that you say, because as soon as you do, they smell blood and then they harass you 10 times more. Just fucking ignore them or tell them to fuck themselves. It's basically what I'm going to do. Oh, so you don't know anything about my politics or my work, but you're going to call me names. Well, just screw off. Go find somebody else to bother. Something more your mental level like Barney and Friends. But the alt-right now is making a transition, and one that I think is quite negative, and it's transitioning away from sort of the frog shitposting, hey, we're going to swear a lot and say crazy things online stage into the trying to form a coherent political movement stage. Big mistake, by the way. I've pointed this out 3 or 4 times. It won't work. It just won't. You will fail at your current ventures doing that. They're abandoning free speech. Now, I find this very funny because for 2 years now, I've had the liberals defaming me as though I was myself a far-right individual because I'm defending the free speech of people who now say they want to basically get rid of the constitutional concept of the United States. Now, if you're talking about European ethno-nationalism, if you're talking about, well, France will be just French people or something, I don't care. I don't live in these countries. Europe has never had a tradition of free speech, or at least not any time recently. Eastern Europe is far more free now than Western Europe because they were under the boot of communists for so long. They understand what it's like. And so there's no codification of free speech. You can already be thrown in jail in Germany for saying the wrong things. So if you establish an ethnic state there and you have basically the same system, the only difference is that there'd be a higher proportion of just Germans being oppressed by that government. You want to be authoritarians, that's fine. Here in the United States, it's a little bit different. And this has been something I've pointed this out before when I'm debating like Spencer or something. There's a difference between, you may not care about culture so much as race, but for somebody like myself who does care about culture and about liberty, there's a big difference between a European and an American tradition. They're centuries removed from one another. They're totally different, or any of the other, like the colonial assets that became countries, became independent and sovereign, like in Australia or something. It's a European founding, yes, it's European in a primordial genetic sense, yes, but there's a different cultural tradition. There's a different way in which communication happens. It's different. You look at Europe, these governments are run predominantly by white individuals. And yet there's not a lot of liberty there. And so the alt-right tells a libertarian, well, if the United States becomes less white, your liberty will go away anyway. The Constitution will be torn apart and you'll end up like, Brazil or something. Okay, so you're suggesting then, siding with you, okay. And the benefit is, I guess, you stay white. But you're also talking about denigrating liberty at the same time. Like, I don't think that it's in your plans to legalize machine guns. And you're talking about now restricting speech too. And then the right to privacy, that's going to go out the window in the transitional period. So you're essentially saying drink poison in order to prevent yourself from being shot in the head. If you care primarily about liberty, about being an individual, you feel more an individual than a group. You don't want to be a collectivist. you're an individualist. If you believe in that, you're basically being told to screw yourself. Now then, what does this mean as far as my feelings overall? Well, there's always been a less libertarian element within the alt-right anyway. I'm going to continue, though, defending the free speech of everybody. Look, the communists don't want me to have free speech either, but I don't believe in deplatforming communists. I'm not going to start saying, well, you know, this one group is the exception to the rule. It's okay to abuse this one group of people. Once you have one group for which you make an exception, you're going to end up having that exception extended and extended. This is how corruption starts. It doesn't matter if the government's all white. It doesn't matter if it's ethno-nationalistic and people are sworn in on a copy of Mein Kampf. It won't work. Human nature permeates through all races. It's just human nature. Power corrupts. This is the fundamental problem. It's the problem with neoliberalism. It's the problem with mob rule, which is the same as anarchy. It's the problem with an ethnic or non-ethnic state. It's the problem with every form of government that isn't significantly limited and constitutional in form. What form your racial composition takes is more determined by how you're governing your borders and immigration process. But I don't hear anyone doing, like ethno-nationalists. Most of them aren't making the common sense connection there and saying, oh, well, we'll repeal like the 60s era Immigration Act, you know, and build a wall, problem solved, according to them. They're not making that connection. They're saying, oh, no, we're going to have to balkanize the United States or something. No thanks. No, I think I want to be able to freely travel to the entire extent of the nation to which I belong and pay taxes to. No, I do not wish to carve it up into chunks. And I guess the idea of some of them is that you'd have like an African America and a white America, and then like California would be like vegan America, because you know nobody gives a shit. So California will end up in the ocean, so there'll be aquatic vegans. It'll be like Atlanta. It'll be like the Little Mermaid or something. They'll be like have their little seaweed gardens, and they'll talk to the fish, and because they won't be eating them. What about shellfish? Are they still okay? Who knows? But yeah, I have to go against the apparent rise of this particular mentality within the alt-right. Again, saying this as a libertarian, not an alt-righter. Spending time trying to defend free speech online and in every other aspect, look, that benefits everyone. Someone on the far left, someone on the far right, because my belief is this. If you reduce liberty and social alienation increases, groups that want to remove more liberty tend to propagate themselves. It creates a death spiral, or it can if it's not controlled. If there's any other significant social pressure, you're in the middle of a depression or something. Otherwise, if there's prosperity and people are at liberty and can get along to some degree, typically people will vote for the status quo, more or less. And I don't even want the status quo. I want more libertarianism. Look, it's just like with the gun control debate. Let us not forget the gun control situation in the United States begins with the Southern Democrat Ku Klux Klan trying to disarm black people by making court arguments. Hey, Second Amendment says nothing about private individuals. It says militias. That was state militias, organized groups. So no, states can choose who can have guns and not. That's, by the way, they still do this for other classes, of course, as opposed to races. They said, hey, if the government of this state wants to block black people from having guns, because remember, they had just been emancipated. They were citizens now. Oh, shit, they're going to get guns. Well, this scares us in the Ku Klux Klan because, we want to be able to basically tell them to stay in line. We're going to have one of them polite Southern cultures down here. That's basically the mentality. They went before the courts. The Southern Democrats, the Ku Klux Klan, were the ones arguing for gun control. They were the ones that started gun control. When people talk about, well, gun control in order to save black lives or something, gun control was instituted by people who wanted to be able to murder you without repercussions. Are you fucking nuts? When I hear Al Sharpton, we need to legislate assault rifles. Oh, come on. Yeah, like you care about black communities. No, it's not the way that it works. So yeah, I have to, the alt-right's wrong on this one. If you're abandoning free speech, don't expect to have a coherent movement for very long. It'll be a big mistake. It'll be sort of like the torch rally there. It's most of your woes really begin there. When you start trying to transfer a largely internet-only movement, which was growing and it was kind of amusing at the time, because it's basically frog memes in many cases. It's like Kekistan, which has become actually now more of a Sargonite movement. He's basically culturally appropriated the concept of Kek posting at this point, which is funny to me. I mean, it is amusing. That was the greatest weapon that the alt-right had, was basically memetics. They've sort of left that behind. They're trying to structure into an intellectual framework now and basically dissolving into never-ending debate. It's essentially what's happening. And of course, I'm going to get alt-righters that'll come here and say, well, you're a liberalist or something, and, you know, shame on you, you're selling out your race, you know, the usual stuff. And some of these people posting it'll actually be like Media Matters or Share Blue, or they'll be like BuzzFeed shills. They won't actually be on the alt-right. They're trying to start shit. I've seen this before. Trust me, I know it goes on. It happened for years on 4chan involving content creators trying to get them to attack one another. It didn't really work very well, mainly because they were out shitposted. But it is true. You've lost your greatest weapon, and now you're gobbling up chunks of ideology that are going to implode your movement. Again, truth doesn't fear investigation. You may not like the truth, but you know, that's basically the way it is. It won't work. That's about all. Peace out.